"Sign here," he said. He was holding the clipboard 6 inches from my IV line. My stitches were 48 hours old. My mouth tasted like iodine. And my husband, the man I'd shared a bed with for 22 years, was standing over me in a hospital room asking me to sign away my dead mother's house. I signed. I didn't know what I signed. I found out 11 days later, sitting at my kitchen table with a letter my mother wrote from her deathbed. "My name is Grace Bellamy. I'm 54 years old. And this is the story of how my mother saved my life from the other side of the grave. I live in a 3-bedroom colonial on Winslow Lane in Richmond, Virginia. Same neighborhood I grew up in. Same streets where my mother, Dorothy Bellamy, walked me to school every morning until I was old enough to tell her I could go alone. And even then, I'd look back at the corner and she'd still be standing there. Watching, making sure. She worked the billing department at St. Mary's Hospital for 29 years. When they gave her a plaque at retirement, she said, a gift card would have been more useful. That was my mother. Love wrapped in practicality. If you've ever trusted someone who didn't deserve it, stay with me. Now let me tell you about the man I married. I married Craig Weston on May 11, 2003. Craig Weston, organized, calculated, and obsessed with value. What I'd actually found was a man who inventoried everything he touched. For the first decade, Craig was good. He handled the finances, filed the taxes, set up the retirement accounts. My mother would say, that man is thorough, not generous, not kind. Thorough. My mother chose her words the way a jeweler sets stones, deliberately, precisely, and never by accident. Craig understood property valuations, title transfers, and closing costs the way most people understand their phone contacts, instantly, reflexively, and without thinking about it. I should have noticed that. I didn't. The signs were there for years. I was looking right at them and seeing something else. Easter 2018. Craig asked my mother, at the dinner table, with the ham still being carved, what she thought the Meadowbrook property was going for these days. My mother set down her fork, looked at Craig for 4 full seconds without blinking, then asked my daughter to pass the rolls. I thought it was conversation. My mother knew it was a calculation. November 2019. I woke up at 1 a.m. to use the bathroom and saw the blue glow of Craig's laptop from the living room. The county assessor's website, the Meadowbrook Street address in the search bar. He closed it when he heard my footsteps on the stairs. Couldn't sleep. Checking work stuff, he said. Meadowbrook wasn't a client property. It was my mother's. August 2021. Craig suggested, over breakfast, buttering his toast like it was nothing, that my mother should sell the Meadowbrook house and put the money somewhere it can actually grow. I said Mom wasn't interested in selling. Craig set down his knife and said, "Sentiment is expensive, Grace. That house is just sitting there aging." He wasn't talking about the house aging. He was talking about my mother, 3 incidents, 3 years, each one a degree bolder, each one inching closer to the number he'd already calculated in his head, and I explained away every single one. My mother didn't explain. She prepared. My mother owned the Meadowbrook house outright, bought it in 1998 for $81,000 with money she'd saved for 9 years working double shifts every December, paid it off by 2016, rented it for $900 a month. It was worth $289,000 the day she died, February 17, 2025, pancreatic cancer. She was 74. 4 days before she passed, she called me to her bedroom. She was propped up on 3 pillows, a yellow legal pad balanced on her knee, and a pen in her hand. She always had a pen. Even when her fingers couldn't close around it without shaking. Even when writing a single word cost her a breath she didn't have to spare. She told me 3 things. First, the house on Meadowbrook is yours. It's been in a trust since 2019. Your name is on the deed. Craig's is not. Second, there is a letter in the top drawer of my cedar chest. Don't open it until you need to. You'll know when. Third, Grace, you are a good woman, but good women make excuses for the people they love. And the people they love don't always deserve them. She held my hand when she said the third one. Her grip was barely there, like holding a bird, but her eyes were steady, clear. The cancer had taken everything else, but it hadn't touched her eyes. She was looking at me the way you look at someone you're trying to protect from something they can't see yet. She died 4 days later. Craig ordered flowers for the funeral. Lilies? My mother hated lilies. He'd been married to her daughter for 22 years and never noticed. 7 months later, September 22, 2025. Emergency appendectomy at Henrico Doctors Hospital. What was supposed to be laparoscopic turned into an open procedure when they found a perforation. 4 days in ICU, 11 days total. Craig visited 3 times. Visit 1, 5 hours post-surgery. Brought my phone charger and a granola bar from the vending machine. Stayed 35 minutes. Spent the last 10 asking my nurse about my medication schedule, what I was on, how often, what it did to my awareness. I thought he was worried. He was planning. Visit 2, 3 days later. Brought nothing. Stayed 20 minutes. Spent most of it scrolling his phone with one hand and holding mine with the other. His hand was limp, the way you hold something you've already decided to put down. Visit 3, day 7. September 28th. This was the one. He walked in wearing his work shirt, the navy one with the creased collar. He had his leather portfolio under his arm, not a hospital bag, his closing portfolio, the one he carried to real estate signings. Hey, babe, I need you to sign a couple insurance forms before the end of the quarter. Take 2 seconds. He put the pen between my fingers. I was on Sedated. The ceiling was swimming, the fluorescent light above me was splitting into 2, and I couldn't have told you my middle name. He guided my hand to the line. I signed. He didn't rush me. That's what made it worse. I signed away my dead mother's house from a hospital bed while my husband held the pen. October 3rd. My friend Maureen drove me home. Craig wasn't there. Sticky note on the kitchen island. At gym, leftovers in fridge. The leftovers were from 6 days ago, green around the edges. I stood in front of the open refrigerator for a long time. A man who meal preps every Sunday. A man who labels Tupperware with dates. That man left week-old food for his wife coming home from 11 days in the hospital. That wasn't forgetfulness. That was a man whose attention was somewhere else, somewhere that $289,000 was sitting in an account he thought no one would check. Day 3, I went through the mail. 11 days of it. Between a Pottery Barn catalog and a water bill, I found a letter from Ashworth Title Services. Transfer confirmation. The house on Meadowbrook Street sold September 28th for $258,000. September 28th. The day Craig walked into my hospital room with his leather portfolio. The buyer was a development LLC I'd never heard of. The seller's name was mine, Grace A. Bellamy. My signature at the bottom. Dated September 25th, predated by 3 days, that's when it clicked. The hospital wasn't the opportunity, it was the plan. My chest went tight, not from the incision. From the physical sensation of understanding, in my body before my mind caught up. That the man who kissed my forehead before I went into surgery had looked at me connected to tubes and monitors and seen a signature line. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the clock above the stove. The neighbor's wind chimes rang once, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times, but that morning it sounded like it was coming through glass. Because everything sounds different when you're standing on the other side of something you can't unknow. October 6th. I drove to the county recorder's office with staples in my abdomen and Tylenol wearing off. The clerk, a woman named Patricia who'd gone to church with my mother for 15 years, pulled the records. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. "Grace," she said, "this property is in an irrevocable trust. Dorothy Bellamy Living Trust, established June 2019. You are the sole trustee and sole beneficiary. Any transfer requires your notarized, witnessed authorization." Then how did it sell? Patricia scrolled through the filing. It didn't, not legally. Someone filed a fraudulent quitclaim deed with a forged signature. The trust supersedes everything. Grace, this house is still yours. I gripped the edge of her desk so hard my knuckles went white. I was not crying. I was not angry. I was somewhere past those things, in the territory where everything goes very, very quiet inside you, and you can hear your own heartbeat like a clock counting down to something you haven't decided yet. He thought he was ahead of me. He was 6 years too late. My mother, 74 years old, dying of pancreatic cancer, barely able to hold a pen, had locked that house in an irrevocable trust 6 years before Craig made his move. She saw this coming the way she saw everything, from a distance, in silence, without telling me, because she knew I'd defend him. I drove home, walked past Craig's running shoes by the front door, past 22 years of photos on the staircase wall, our wedding, the kids' birthdays, Christmas mornings. Past the kitchen where he made me coffee every morning for 2 decades. I used to think the coffee meant love. Now I think it meant routine. And routine is how people who don't love you anymore keep you from noticing. The cedar chest, top drawer, white envelope. My mother's handwriting, careful, deliberate, each letter a small war against the tremor in her hands. Grace. If you're reading this, Craig has done something with the Meadowbrook house. I don't know what, I don't know when, but I know he will. I've watched him for 17 years. I've watched him ask about property values at Easter dinner. I've watched the way his eyes change when I mention the tenant's rent. They go narrow, Grace. Not curious. Calculating. The way a man's eyes go when he's running numbers he doesn't want you to see. I watched him drive past Meadowbrook 3 times in 1 week in October 2018. He didn't know I was home. I was sitting in my kitchen with the blinds half open because I needed to be sure. Your father was the same way, trusting. He loaned his brother $14,000 in 1991 and never got a penny back, and when I asked him why, he said, "He's family, Dorothy." Family doesn't always mean safe, Grace. You know that in your head, but your heart hasn't caught up. The trust was established June 8, 2019. Attorney Linda Faye Chen, offices on West Broad Street. She has copies of everything. The house cannot be sold, transferred, or leveraged without your personal, notarized, witnessed authorization. Craig's name appears nowhere. Do not confront him. Take this letter to Linda. Let her do what lawyers do. I love you. I have loved you since the night nurse put you on my chest, and you made a sound like a kitten, and I thought, this is the person I will protect for the rest of my life. Your mother. Dorothy. I sat on the edge of her bed. The quilt she made, the one with the blue and yellow squares she sewed during the chemo sessions when she said she needed something to do with her hands, was still folded at the foot. I pressed my face into it. It still smelled like her. Like Pond's cold cream and Earl Grey and the lavender sachets she kept in every drawer. And I cried, not for what Craig did, for what my mother did. For the image of a 74-year-old woman, body failing, hands trembling, writing taking everything she had sitting in a lawyer's office on West Broad Street, building a fortress around her daughter while her daughter didn't even know there was a war. She didn't accuse Craig. She didn't warn me. She didn't try to break up my marriage. She just built a wall I didn't know existed until I needed it. Linda Faye Chen picked up on the first ring. Your mother told me you'd call, she said. She didn't say when. She just said, Grace is smart, but she's kind first. Kindness slows you down when you're dealing with someone who isn't. Even gone, my mother was the sharpest person in the room. Linda pulled the full trail. Craig had extracted my electronic signature from a DocuSign, a joint refinance document from 2021, and used it to forge a quitclaim deed. He'd used a notary named Brian Holt, a guy from his golf league, to stamp it without proper verification. Brian would later tell investigators he thought it was routine. $289,000 in real estate, a forged signature pulled from a sedated woman, a notary stamp exchanged as a golf buddy favor. Routine, the $258,000 sale proceeds had been wired to a Shell LLC in Craig's name. He'd already moved $194,000 into a personal account at Merrill Lynch in 11 days, while his wife lay in a hospital wondering why he only came 3 times. Linda filed a fraud complaint with the Commonwealth's attorney. Civil suit for forgery, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Complaint against Brian Holt's notary commission with the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Then she called Craig's attorney and said 5 words. The property was in trust. Silence. Linda told me later she counted to 9 before anyone spoke. She said it was the most satisfying silence of her 26-year career. Craig came home that evening, gym bag over one shoulder, protein shake in hand. He walked in with the energy of a man who thought everything was still in place, The wife, the house, the money, the life he'd assembled around himself like scaffolding. He saw me at the kitchen island. My mother's letter. Linda's card. A manila folder thick enough to prop a door open. He set the protein shake down slowly. The ice inside it shifted. The kitchen faucet dripped. Once, twice. "How much do you know?" he asked. "Everything my mother wanted me to." His jaw tightened. "Your mother is dead, Grace." "She is. But her trust isn't, and neither is the paper trail you left." He sat down across from me. He didn't apologize. He didn't panic. He leaned back in his chair the way he does in meetings, arms crossed, chin up, still performing, still managing. "You were in the hospital," he said. "You were on painkillers. You couldn't even." "Finish that sentence, Craig. Say it out loud. Tell me exactly what you did to a woman who couldn't see straight. Say the words." Silence. The dishwasher was running. The neighbor's dog barked once, sharp and short. The kitchen clock ticked through 5 seconds that stretched like wire. He didn't finish the sentence. "The house is still mine," I said. "It was always mine. My mother made sure of that 6 years ago." "You spent 22 years married to me. And in all that time, you never once asked yourself why a retired billing clerk with a yellow legal pad went to a lawyer's office on West Broad Street in June of 2019. I stood up, my incision pulled. I didn't flinch. "You saw a dying woman and a drugged wife, and you thought the road was clear. What you didn't see was that my mother spent her last clear-headed weeks building a wall you'd never get over. Not because she hated you, Craig. Because she loved me more than you ever did." Craig's hands were flat on the counter. His knuckles pressed white against the marble. He was staring at the letter, my mother's handwriting, shaky but certain, and I watched his face shift. Not guilt, recognition. The look of a man realizing he'd been outplayed by a woman he never once took seriously. "You didn't outsmart me, Craig. You just proved my mother was right." "I want you out by Friday," I said. He left the protein shake on the counter. The condensation pooled around the bottom and dripped onto the floor overnight. I wiped it up the next morning. 22 years of marriage, and the last thing he left me was a ring of water on the marble. Fitting. The dominoes didn't just fall. They shattered. Brian Holt's notary commission, suspended. Under investigation by the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Craig's real estate license, revoked. 19 years in commercial property, gone in one phone call from the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation. The $194,000 in his Merrill Lynch account, frozen by court order. The Shell LLC, dissolved. Craig filed a counterclaim arguing I had verbally authorized the sale. Linda had it dismissed in 11 days. The judge used the word unconscionable 3 times. 3. He moved into a studio apartment on Midlothian Turnpike. Last I heard, he's doing contract work for a property management firm. Processing other people's closings. Filing other people's deeds. The irony doesn't need me to explain it. The house on Meadowbrook Street was re-rented on November 1st. A young couple, a nurse and a high school art teacher, asked if they could repaint the kitchen yellow. I said yes. My mother's kitchen was yellow, she'd like that. I walked through the house before they moved in. Stood in the living room where my mother used to sit in her green armchair every evening with a cup of Earl Grey and the crossword puzzle from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. The chair was gone. The room was empty. But I swear on my mother's name, the house still smelled like her. Like Pond's cold cream and Earl Grey and lavender sachets tucked into drawers she'd never open again. I locked the front door and sat in my car in the driveway for a long time. The oak tree my mother planted the year she bought the house, 1998, a bare sapling she carried home in the back seat of her Buick, is 27 years old now. Its branches cover the entire front yard. She planted it because she said every house needs something that grows. I still live on Winslow Lane. I still work at the dental practice on Patterson Avenue, where I've been office manager for 16 years. I still drive past Meadowbrook every Sunday, and I still stop at the bakery on Carey Street, where my mother took me every Saturday morning when I was a girl. I order what she ordered, a plain croissant and a black coffee. The woman behind the counter, Diane, stopped asking years ago. She just nods when I walk in. The cedar chest sits at the foot of my bed now. The top drawer is empty. I don't need the letter anymore. I know it by heart, every word. Every tremble of her handwriting, every place where the pen pressed harder because she was fighting to keep her hands steady. My mother told me 3 things before she died. She was right about all of them. But there's a 4th thing she didn't say, the thing she trusted me to figure out on my own. Some women build walls to keep the world out. My mother built one to keep her daughter standing. And every brick, every clause in that trust, every line on that legal pad, every visit to the lawyer's office she never told me about, was laid by hands that were already failing, by a heart that refused to stop protecting mine even after it stopped beating. Quiet women don't always stay quiet. Sometimes they just wait. They wait until the pen is steady, the papers are filed, and the wall is finished. And then they rest. Because they know that when the storm comes, their daughter will find the letter, read the words, and understand. I am not a vengeful woman. But I am my mother's daughter, and my mother didn't raise a woman who stays down. She raised a woman who gets back up, opens the drawer, reads the letter, and does what needs to be done. Quietly, completely, and without raising her voice. He thought he sold my mother's house. What he actually did was prove she had already won. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and join our community for more true life stories. We'll see you in the next one.